I thought it might be useful this week to run through the things I've learned in the past 7 days of ownership of the Trident, answer your questions and generally just follow up on some of the comments you've left on my Rode It, Loved It, Bought It video from last week. I know a lot of you are waiting on your Trident either because your country hasn't got the bike yet or because you're in the UK and your bike has arrived, but you're hanging on until March the 1st to get the new 21 plate number. For whatever reason, many of you are having to get your Trident fix from YouTube, so this video's for you. Stick around to the end and I'll even treat you to some engine noise. In no particular order then, here are my reflections on the 2021 Triumph Trident after a week of ownership. Now, suspension. I pointed out in last week's first impressions video that I was surprised by how firm the rear suspension felt for what is intended to be a beginner's bike. It certainly felt firmer than my much more sporty 2017 Street Triple RS, to the point where I actually had a poke around to make sure the dealer hadn't left a shipping block in the rear shock in the rush to get the bike to me. They hadn't, but the preload adjustment was in the middle setting. I checked the manual and it says that out of the factory, preload is set to solo rider, i.e. the softest setting, which here is to the left. I tried and failed to shift it with the fairly rudimentary adjustment tool that came with the bike, so I've asked my dealer to set it for me when they install the accessories I ordered. Let's hope it has some effect, because Lamb Chop also commented on the firm suspension in his first ride video, although he didn't say if he'd looked at the setting on his particular bike. The Michelin Road Grip tyres, standard fit on all Tridents, are now scrubbed in and are working fine, very confidence inspiring, plenty of grip in the bends, at least in the dry. It doesn't rain here very often, and when it does I tend to take the car. I've had quite a few comments about the ugly number plate hanger, mounted as it is to the swing arm. It's not terrible, but I think we'd all agree that the bike would look better without it. The problem is, of course, you need to put the plate and the indicator somewhere, so it's either there or having some sort of under-seat solution. I don't know, we'll have to see what Evotech or Tech Parts come up with, but in the meantime I can certainly live with it. It's not as offensive in person as perhaps it is in photos. I could say the same about the horn. Visually it's a little bit conspicuous, although less so in person, because you tend to see the bike from a standing position rather than a close-up or low-angle shot from a camera like this, where it's a bit in your face. I have had a quick look at alternative mounting points, and there aren't any obvious ones, so if you have any ideas, please let me know in the comments. As I mentioned in last week's video, the horn button is a bit small and quite firm to press, and the noise is a bit pathetic, although this is common to most motorbikes. I'll probably be swapping it for a Denali sound bomb or something similar anyway. Quite a few of you have asked about fuel consumption, and I do realise this is important for those of you considering the Trident for a daily commute to work or other regular long distance trips. Well, as you can see here, so far I've been averaging 5.8 litres per 100 kilometres, which works out at just over 40 mpg UK or 33 US. I don't think this is too bad considering the engine is brand new and therefore very tight, and I expect it will improve once the bike's had its first service. Talking of servicing, Triumph is very keen to point out that the Trident only needs servicing every 10,000 miles or 16,000 kilometres. That is true, but bear in mind that if, like me, you do less than 10,000 miles a year, you'll still have to have an oil change, etc. done on the bike annually. To quote page 88 of the user manual, motorcycles travelling less than 10,000 miles per year must be maintained annually. A quick word on the demographics. I'm always curious to see how the audience age range varies according to which bike I'm reviewing. Perhaps it shouldn't come as a surprise given the type of rider Triumph are aiming the Trident at, but just look at the age breakdown for the Trident compared to the audience for my video a couple of weeks ago on the BMW F900XR. I must admit I do feel younger riding the Trident than I did my adventure bikes. Anyway, back to the bike. I mentioned the stiff clutch action last week, and a week on, having used it a bit more, there's good and bad news. The good news is I don't think the issue is how hard you have to squeeze it, but rather the distance you have to pull it. Unlike the brake lever, the clutch can't be adjusted, and it is quite a stretch even for my fairly large hands. It's by no means a deal breaker for me, and I have got used to it, but it might be advisable to check this for yourself to see if you're comfortable operating the clutch. The levers can always be swapped for shorter aftermarket models, of course, but this will involve additional cost. The foot pegs are quite high, meaning my legs are relatively tucked up. I'm 6'1", 1m87. Similar to on the Street Triple, in fact, which again is a bit surprising for a bike aimed at beginners or oldies like me. It's not uncomfortable, just a slightly odd decision by Triumph, although I suspect this was also dictated by the need to accommodate the rather large Euro 5 exhaust. As you can see here, there isn't a lot of space down there. The red bits, okay, specific to the silver and red combination that I went for, but quite a few people have commented on these, and I would agree that Triumph have gone a little bit over the top. Red highlights or accents should be just that, discrete highlights, and there are too many of them here. The underseat cowling is nice, the radiator covers are okay, but the weirdly shaped patch on the front mudguard is too much in my opinion. And all the decals on the bike have been clear coated over, so you can't remove them. Well, you can, but the paint underneath is going to be matte. There are a number of solutions ranging from vinyl wrapping in black or grey, or even carbon fibre, which as we all know will give the bike an extra 5 horsepower, or I could even buy a mudguard from one of the black Tridents. We'll have to see. The radiator sticks out too much, you've said. Yes, ideally it would be a bit narrower, and the red covers don't do anything to make it less visible, but you can't see it at all when riding because the tank's in the way. I suspect it was either the smallest size Triumph could get away with from a cooling point of view, or else they were looking to save a few quid by using the radiator from another bike. Not really a bike for two-up riding? Yes, I agree, but personally I'm not that bothered because I hardly ever take a pillion on any of my bikes. The rear of the seat looks quite small. I say looks because my wife and I haven't tried it yet, and I didn't spec the optional grab handles in order to keep the clean look of the rear. And in fact I may well remove the rear foot pegs altogether to make it look even cleaner, but the frame lugs do look quite meaty, so I'll probably wait for some blanking plugs from the likes of R&G. Front brake is good. It did initially feel a little wooden, but it's slowly improving as I put the miles on. It's certainly a step down from the incredible Brembo M50s I had on the Street Triple, but it's good enough. The rear, on the other hand, is excellent, probably the most powerful and genuinely useful rear brake I've ever used on a motorbike, Triumph Rocket included. The Trident's a light bike, of course, and I haven't been going that fast yet, but the brakes are good enough and they do get my vote of confidence. I decided against the Triumph tank pad in the end, although I did order one, because I think it would spoil the looks, at least on this silver tank. So I've made a temporary protector from a piece of 3M Scotch Guard. You can just make out the line as I zoom in here. It's not perfect, but it will prevent any scratches until the aftermarket guys are up to speed. The seat is far more comfortable than the church pew I had on the BMW, and I can also stretch out a bit more because the pillion seat ridge has been positioned a bit further back, just as well considering the relatively high foot pegs I mentioned earlier and the overall sporty riding position. As for vibrations, well, I haven't detected any yet in my normal semi-urban riding, either in the mirrors, which seem particularly stable, or through the bars, though I did feel a tiny bit of vibration in the bars and pegs at around 75 miles an hour, 120 kilometers an hour, on a very short run on the motorway the other day. It's not nearly as intrusive as the vibrations I had with my Honda CB500X a couple of years ago, but if you do intend using your bike on this type of fast road, you should maybe check it out. I realised quite quickly that the knee grips hollowed out into the tank don't grip at all, really. I don't know about leathers, but certainly my riding jeans just glide over the surface as if it were normal smooth plastic. Also, they're too high even for my 6'1", 1m87 frame, and I can only grip the tank properly by sitting on tiptoes, if that makes sense. I find in normal riding, I grip this piece of plastic here, so some sort of high friction rubber pad would be a nice accessory to have. So what about the gearbox? Well, only positive things to say about that. It's lovely and smooth, all the ratios have been chosen well, and something that I always appreciate, neutral is easy to find. It's certainly as sweet as the gearbox I had on the Honda CB500X, and that's saying something. Fueling is also spot on, no problems at all so far. Riding in around the small towns joined together by fairly fast A roads that we have here in the Algarve, it's all very nice. The headlight's fine, it certainly looks good, and indeed that's one of the things that attracted me to the Trident in the first place. I've only been able to test it in an underground car park, but the dipped beam seems very good. Not so sure about the full beam, it doesn't seem to give out any more light than on dipped, but I haven't really had a chance to test it properly yet. So what about manoeuvring? Well, it's a small light bike, and after my last two bikes, both tall, relatively top-heavy adventure bikes, the Trident is very easy to move around, whether you're sitting on it or walking it around the garage. It would suit a female owner or smaller rider, no problem at all. In fact, I asked my wife to give it a go, pushing it around the garage, and she said it was fine. Right, as promised, I shall play out with a short sample of the engine noise. Apologies in advance for any wind you may pick up. I was just using my smartphone, no external microphone, so the quality isn't that amazing. But anyway, hope you've enjoyed the video. Stick around for more videos on the Trident. I think I'll probably be doing a mods video next, and as always, thanks for watching.